Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Movies, They're Pretty Good. I'm your host, Travis Dudding, and today we are going to until he makes another movie, complete the Ari Aster filmography with Beau is Afraid. This one, I had a very rocky relationship with. I saw it, I believe, opening day, and this was when it was on just select screens. Luckily, I lived in LA at the time, or LA County, but I had access to LA theaters, and saw it in IMAX on the first chance I got, and hated it immediately. I was enjoying the ride, but when it got to the final act, I was just like, okay, do I like this? And then when it ended, I just was like, man, I really wanted to like it and just wasn't liking it. But I just couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks, I think. And just kept thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? It's still on my mind. Let me go see it again. Saw it again, loved it. And then saw it a third time, loved it. And then for the podcast, this was my fourth viewing. So great movie, insane movie. If you didn't like it the first time, maybe give it another shot, but hey, that's just my experience, so but yes, great movie, real weird. I wanted to do something a little different this time. I know I usually break everything down scene by scene. This is a very long movie with a lot to talk about if you were to do it that way. So I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the themes, what I understand from it, the fact that Ari Aster himself doesn't want to explain exactly all the deeper meanings and stuff. He's talked a little bit about it, but mostly about the surface stuff, that anyone can watch it and get that it's about anxiety. I think that's no surprise. I'm not blowing anyone's mind by telling you this is a film about anxiety. And that's another reason I wanted to talk about this one, because I am a huge sufferer from anxiety. It's the reason that it's been a few weeks since there's been an episode. It's very easy for someone with anxiety to just kind of talk yourself out of simple things, even things you enjoy. And I do enjoy doing this podcast. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't enjoy it, because it's not I'm not a famous person, I'm not making a bunch of money off of this. I'm just, I'm spending money on it because it's something I enjoy. So to even not want to do this, that's just a thing that happens. And you'll talk yourself out of I don't want to go see my friends. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this family function and stuff like that. And then there's valid reasons for things like that. But I'm just saying, it's when you usually enjoy it, it becomes something that you're you can work yourself up to not wanting to do it. Since I'm already talking about it, let's talk about that. The main theme, anxiety. Beau, main character, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is a very anxious person. The first time we see him, he's waiting to go to therapy. Basically, the movie is we're seeing it through his eyes. This is how he sees the world. And he's someone, it's a little exaggerated, but, not far off, because... And then another thing to point out, if you're not an anxious person, everyone's anxiety is different. Not everyone's experiencing the world the way that Beau Wasserman does in this movie. Not everyone experiences it like I do. That being said, it's very... even though it's heightened and exaggerated, it's still not too far off, because it's he's seeing the world it's this dangerous place. There's all of these people out to get him, and it's the news is sensationalizing things, which that's accurate to real life, and it's making you afraid to go outside, and there's all these people that want to hurt you, and all this stuff, and everything's my fault, because he has a mother that guilt trips him and is very controlling and very like smothering. While I've been lucky enough to not have that be my experience with my mother, I know it's a commonality, another thing that people could relate to. And when you have someone in your life that is like, basically for Beau, it's his like only person in his life, because he shuts himself off from so many people because he's afraid. Like, he basically like talks to his mom and his therapist and his landlord. You know, those are the people like in his contact list, like later on in the movie, that's all you see. So what basically kicks off the movie is he's supposed to go visit his mother the next day. He's telling his therapist about this, and he goes home, goes to bed, is getting ready for bed, and there's just this, he keeps getting notes under his door of one of the neighbors, either next door, upstairs, downstairs, whatever, because he's in an apartment complex. And whoever this neighbor is putting notes under the door. It's like, hey, you know, the music's too loud, the bass is too heavy, like, can you turn it down? We're trying to sleep, it's late, you know, I got work tomorrow, whatever, like something like that. And, you know, it's kind of like reasonable, but like a little like, hey, come on, like, can you turn the music down, please? But, you know, Beau's just in bed, like, he's not like playing music or anything. And so he's like, what, you know, what's going on? And then, you know, goes back to sleep like an hour or so later, pounded on the door, another note, like, I tell you to turn it down and you turn it up, and like all this stuff. And it's like, please, like, people are trying to sleep. And then goes back to sleep, another note, and this time the guy is pissed, and he's like, I tell you to turn it down, you turn it up. Like, how do you like this? And then he like starts blasting his own music in his apartment, and it's just this like techno at full blast. The walls are shaking and everything. Beau covers his ears and, you know, tries to get some sleep. Because of this, he misses, you know, he doesn't hear his alarm. It's been going off for hours. It's like an hour until his flight is going to leave. And so he's panicking in the morning, well, afternoon. He's panicking and he's getting ready as fast as he can. And he goes to, he has his keys in the door. He's going to leave and lock the door. And he's like, oh, wait. And then remembers and goes back and gets his medicine or toothbrush, something like that. Something that he could easily have like bought a new one wherever he's going. And when he comes back to lock his door, his keys are gone. And, you know, so this is like kind of what starts the chaos, you know. And he's on a new medication that he has to take with water. So he like takes his meds because he's starting to panic. Doesn't have any water in the house. The water's shut off for some reason in the building. Goes across the street, but he can't lock his door, so that's scary. And his credit cards are shut off because he calls his mom and is like, hey, like, this is what happened. And of course, she just like makes him feel guilty, like it's just an excuse for him to not visit her. And so that's like where we get our first indication of their dynamic. And so yeah, he tries to go get this water. His credit card's declined because his money's just through his mom, who we'll later find out is like very wealthy. And so he's like trying to pay for it, and then people are like going into the apartment complex, and so he tries to get back in, and then he gets locked out because he doesn't have his key. And then everyone like from the whole like city pretty much is in his apartment partying and stuff like that and trashing the place. When he finally does get back in, he tries to call his mom because he left his phone in there too, and that's the other problem. So he gets his phone, and when he calls, it's some guy picks up, and it's a UPS driver, and says, like, hey, like, who's this? Like, you know, and he's like very like nervous and everything on the other side of the phone. He's like, oh, like, I'm looking for my mom, like, your mom, like, can you describe her? And he's like, oh, she's has this color hair or whatever. And then he's like, well, can you describe her body, like what her physique? And, you know, this is like, what is that? Like, what, why would you need to know that? And he's like, listen, like, I'm a UPS driver. I open the door because the dogs were going crazy in the neighborhood, and there's a smell. And so I open the door, and there's a body, or a lady, but the body of a lady, or at least I think it is, because the head's gone. I can't tell. And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, it looks like a chandelier fell on her head. So there's just like, what we're gathering is like Beau's mom, was standing in her, foyer, dining room, living room, whatever, and a chandelier fell on her head and crushed her head. And this UPS guy found her, and he's like trying to like be tactful and says like, hey, like, oh, maybe you dialed the wrong number. And Beau's like, oh yeah, probably. And then it's, but he like looks down at his phone and it says mom, so, and then he like hangs up and calls again. And the guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then he just goes into shock and everything. Ends up like, and, he goes into shock. He was trying to take a bath, and the bathtub, like, water is, like, flooding the apartment, and this is what kind of, like, snaps him out of it a little bit when the water hits his feet, and he's like, okay. Then he, like, goes, but he's still, like, in shock, and takes a bath. Random guy is just, like, on the ceiling, like, kind of, like, braced on, like, the walls and everything, like, up by the ceiling, and then, like, a brown recluse or something, spider, that there was a warning on Beau's door earlier, just like kind of crawls across his face. And then, of course, that makes him drop into the tub on top of Beau. Beau freaks out, takes off running naked out of the apartment, gets hit by a food truck and stabbed a bunch of times. And so this is just like the start of his journey. And that's like the end of like Act 1. One thing that's very interesting is that I heard a different podcast. Man, I wish I could remember the name, but it's like on, it's like a screenwriting podcast. And it was, the guy was interviewing Ari Aster, and it was just, Ari put it that this movie has 4 acts. I know like the usual, script is a 3-act structure. And this one has 4. So you got the first one, which is Beau in the city. Second one is Beau in the home of the woman who hit him with the food truck, Grace. And this is Grace and Roger are a couple. Grace, played by Amy Ryan from The Office, is what I know her from. She's also in like The Wire and stuff. And Roger, played by Nathan Lane, who is, I mean, they're both amazing in this, but, it's Nathan Lane. And so the second act is him, like, with these people that hit him with his car, but you could just tell something's off. But it's like what's really off or what's in Beau's head is what, basically the whole movie is like that. And, so he's just stuck at this house. He's injured because he got hit by a car and stabbed a bunch of times. One thing that's just crazy about this movie is like all of like the different like people, because like I said, like he's scared by the stuff he's seeing on the news. The news is reporting this guy called the what is it, Birthday Boy Stab Man or something like that, and it's just this old guy completely naked. And it's funny because like they're showing the news footage of him, and you got like the ticker tape across the bottom that's like talking about the different news stories, and that's like just like should be like covering his crotch area, but you can see his penis like dangling like below the thing, and it's just really funny. And but he's just this like old guy that's completely naked with a knife. He's just like fuck you, and that's the news footage of him, and that's the guy that ends up stabbing him a bunch. And but yeah, so he's in this couple's home recovering. He's in their teenage daughter's room. She's like completely like whatever, like if you had like a fear of, which I think most people, at least like millennials, once you hit like a certain age, you're like afraid of teenagers. And so like that's like the scariest place to be for an anxious person, is like this very mean teenage girl's room, and you feel like you're putting her out and she's gonna be mean to you no matter what you do. And that's kind of like this character is. It's like, what's the worst case scenario? Who's the worst person's bed I can be in? And it's this suburban teenage girl who's very mean. And so this whole second act is him just like being at this house. He finally gets a hold of the family lawyer, and it's like, hey, like, where the hell have you been? Like, you were the first person contacted, and then no one's heard from you for days. And he's guilt tripping him too, just like his mom was. And he's like, the funeral won't happen till you get here. You better be here. This was your mother's wishes and all that stuff. And he's like trying to explain that he got hit by a car, and obviously the other guy's not listening. But, this is just like a few different things. Like, everything will keep going wrong because he's like, hey, like, he's like breaking down in tears. Like, I got to get there. I got to get to my mom's funeral and all this stuff. And Roger is just like, hey, man, like, because he's always just like, hey, my brother, and it's like really funny. I think that's what makes his performance stand out so much, is that it's Nathan Lane as just saying stuff like, hey, my brother, my dude, my guy, and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, like, we'll take you first thing in the morning, like, let's do it, or something like that. And they're getting ready in the morning, or maybe he might have said he was going to go to work, like do one thing, and then they would go in the afternoon. But then he gets a call, like, when they're getting ready to leave. No, never mind. Yeah, it is just they're going to go in the morning. But so they're getting ready to go. They're eating breakfast and everything. And then Roger gets a call saying like, oh, no, like, and then, we're only hearing the one side of it. And he's like, hey, like, this longtime patient of mine, got injured and I have to do a surgery and this. And he's like, I'm sorry, it's going to take me hours, like, but... so I don't know if we'll be able to go today. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute, because I have these other surgeries tomorrow. I'll pull those to today. And which I don't think, and this is like one of those other things that's very like suspicious about the whole thing, is I don't think you could just be like, if you have these surgeries scheduled for another day, be like, oh, by the way, it's today, because it depends on what the surgery is. Like, sometimes you have to fast before, and if you're not like prepared for that. So this is where it's like, all like, okay, it's very suspicious and bullshit and everything like that. Because when he's like, oh, like, I'll do surgeries today and we'll go tomorrow. Is that okay, Beau? And then he's just, he's just very like, because you're a people pleaser. And you don't want to put anybody out, no matter what. And even like in the most dire situations, and you could tell he doesn't want to say yes to this. And he's like, no, you said we were going to go today. That's what you want to do. That's what your head is screaming, but you just can't. It's like, because you're so afraid of like what the response is going to be or whatever. You know what I mean? And it doesn't like really make sense. Like on the outside, from the outside, you're just like, just say what you mean, but it's just not that simple. It's like your brain, something chemically is like keeping you from it. So then when he's asking him, it's like, he's like, is that okay with you? And then Beau's like, yeah, like kind of reluctantly. He's like, is it, Beau? Is it okay? Like, think real hard about that. And that's like very like, okay, like what does Roger know? Because, and I didn't mention this before, as they're having this breakfast, Beau says something like, kind of, like, I don't know. I forget what it is that he says, but Grace gives him a note with the coffee, like, on the napkin, but it's covered with the coffee mug. And then Beau lifts it up, and the note says, stop incriminating yourself. And she's definitely, like, making an effort to hide it from Roger. Because she, like, is going to give it to him, but then Roger comes over to talk, and then she pulls it back, So yeah, it's like something's going on, like, conspiracy-wise and everything. And so then, like, that's more confirmed when Roger's like, is it, Beau? Like, think real hard about that. And, of course, Beau, we know Beau's not going to say, like, no, it's not okay. We know that. And so, yeah, Roger goes and does his surgeries. Grace leaves. Beau's trying to ask, like, what do you, when he finally reads the note, he's like, what do you mean by that? But she just, like, keeps walking and leaves for work, too. So he's stuck at the house. He ends up getting on the computer and looking up information about his mom and the obituary and everything like that. And at some point he has a... Oh, wait, never mind. That happens later. But earlier we saw that one of the few possessions he has is a Polaroid of a girl named Elaine. And it's like a young preteen girl. And then, when he's watching this news footage of his mom's death, one of the people interviewed is this Elaine, but as an adult, played by Parker Posey. And so he's like, Elaine, thinking, and then it makes him throw up on the laptop, which is the daughter's laptop. She comes in and she's like, what the fuck? Did you just throw up on my laptop? And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'll try to clean it up. And she's like, get ready. We're leaving. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm just like, Roger said I'm supposed to stay here. She's like, who do you think told me to take you? And then so he gets in the car, and it's just her and her friend, who's a cheerleader, because she's still in her uniform. And, so even more of a nightmare scenario for Beau. And he's stuck with these two teens that are smoking weed, but they say it's laced with something, but they don't say what it is. Because then they make him smoke it, and he's like, what is it? It's you have to, my dad said you had to, it's going to make you feel better or whatever. And he's gullible and a pushover, but he's still smart enough to look through that bullshit. But that doesn't matter, because it's the pressure is what makes it hard to say no to stuff like that. And she's like, if you don't smoke this, then I'm going to say that you tried to kidnap us and took advantage of us and all this stuff. And so he finally does it, and he's like, what is it? It's she just says it's three things. So who knows? It's PCP laced or whatever, or just some made up shit, or she's just fucking with them because and he's just built it up in his head that it's something major. So he smokes it. He ends up getting a flashback to when he's on this cruise where he meets Elaine, and he's on a cruise with his mom, and there's really no other kids there except for this Elaine girl who he meets, and then they kind of they share a kiss and stuff, and they really connect. But then, her mom, drags her off the ship in the middle of the night, and, she, breaks into the room, Beau, my mom's making me leave, but I love you, wait for me, and then gives him the Polaroid and everything that we had seen earlier in the film. So, he has this, one other connection besides his mom, but it's someone that he hasn't had contact with since he's a kid. But yeah, of course, the daughter isn't really taking him anywhere because they just drive around in circles while he's freaking out on whatever drug it was. And then the next day, so next morning's the day that they're going to leave. And at some point, Grace comes up to him and she's like, hey, I know, I see you, I know what you're going through and all this stuff, and I want to help you. But then Roger comes in and kind of is like, hey, Grace, can you help me outside real quick? And she's like, oh, sure, whatever. And then whispers in Beau's ear, turn to channel 78 or something like that. I forget the actual channel number. So he does on the TV, and it's him there in the living room. There's a hidden camera somewhere. So, then he rewinds, and it goes back to when Grace came in and was whispering to him, and it's okay, so he can rewind it. So then he starts to fast forward, and then he sees all these different things, and we're only seeing bits and pieces because he fast forwards fast, and it's him in the woods and him on a boat or something, just sitting on a ledge and a weird room and stuff like that. So all he's seeing ahead what's going to happen, and we'll of course get all of those images throughout the movie. And but as he's doing this, he's interrupted by Tony, the daughter, comes in with 2 buckets of paint and just come here, yelling at him and stuff. And they go into the brother's room because there was a brother that had died in the military, and so but the room was still there, preserved as it as he left it and everything, because that's just the way that the mom is coping. And so the sister's like, we're gonna, put some color on these walls and stuff, and just gets these like buckets of paint out and everything. And she's like very distraught and everything too. So she's like trying to get him to paint the walls, and Beau doesn't want to do it. And she writes like Beau's name in pink paint like all over the pictures and everything. And she's like, it's like, oh, like, you'll just get fucked up with me, but you won't, like, help me or whatever. And then he's like, all right, like, he's just trying to calm her down. He's trying to diffuse the situation. He's doing pretty well for someone in that situation with, like, what he has going on mentally. But it's just like, you can, like, we as people can only do so much for people that are, struggling with whatever. Whatever, like, she's supposed to be the allegory for, it's, it's kind of like, you can't fix someone else if you can't fix yourself. That type of, mentality, I guess. But yeah, she just ends up, like chugging this, like, bucket of blue paint, or, not, like, the whole thing, but she just starts, like, drinking paint. And, Beau's trying to stop her, and it doesn't work, and she just drinks it and passes out. Then Grace comes in and just sees Beau with her dead daughter, like, with paint all over her, and Beau's name written on the wall, and she just takes that as, like, oh, you're trying to replace my son, you're trying to be part of this family and all this stuff. So, so then she's freaking out and like, I see who you are now and everything. And then she sends, because they have this guy, Jeeves, living in a trailer on their property. And Jeeves is someone that served with their son, and he's got like extreme PTSD and everything. So it's just like, she's like, Jeeves, like, kill him, like go after him and everything. I should note that when Beau first woke up in their house, he had an ankle monitor on, and Roger's like, oh, that's just like a health monitor. No, you could tell it's a fucking tracker. So Jeeves is going to be tracking him later on. This is going to send us into Act 3 of 4 acts, like I said. 4. It helps if I do that right number with my hands. So yeah, now we head into Act 3 because Beau hits his head on a branch as he's running away. He does like break through a glass window, like with his body. So he wakes up. He's got a piece of glass stuck in his forehead. He's wandering through the woods. He comes across this woman, and she helps him, and takes the glass out and like helps him and everything. Turns out that she is part of this like theater group that are like, they're all orphans, and they like wander through the forest together, and they set up these like plays and all this stuff. It's the Orphans of the Forest, I think is what they're called, but I could be wrong. So yeah, this is the third act. It's this like theater group. He's there for the play, like they're about to start their play and everything. They get him like new clothes and everything that aren't covered with paint or blood, and he gets like sucked into the play because it's like kind of mirroring his own life, and it's this guy that like his parents are both dead because like like I'm gonna end up like talking about most of the movie, I think, even though I said in the beginning I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna talk about the whole movie, but here I fucking go. At the beginning, the reason he's going to visit his mom is because it's the anniversary of his dad's death, but his dad died before he was even born. And we're going to, like, during the play, get the whole story on that, at least from his mom's perspective, what the whole story is. And so it's like, oh, the protagonist of the play, like his parents are both dead, and he's like needs to go like move on with his life and go on this journey, and he's chained to the ground, and this like angel or something tells him like, oh, like these chains have always been there, you just didn't know but you can break them. And then he like breaks them with the axe, and he goes on this journey, and he like meets a woman, and he gets married, and he has kids. One thing that's like really funny is just like the narration of the angel like saying all this stuff, like what you're gonna do, is very like matter of fact. Like it's so hard to explain it. But she's just like, you will meet a woman and you will have children with her because you have she will become pregnant because you have sex with her. You know, that type of that energy is what she's bringing to it, and it is just very like funny. That's kind of the vibe of most of the movie. It is like I don't think I'm commenting on how funny this movie is. It is hilarious, but like in a very dark way. And I think like because when you only talk about the story points, it just makes it sound like a horror movie or a thriller, you know, just very intense. But it is like very funny. So in the play, the man like meets a woman. They have 3 kids together, but then there's a storm and they all become separated, and he like spends the rest of his life until he becomes an old man looking for his family. And like in the story, he like wanders into the forest and there's a play happening. He sits down and listens to the play, and as he gets there, he realizes this story is about me. And then it's like it shows him because like we see Beau like transform, like I said, he got sucked into the play, so we're seeing it as Beau is the protagonist of the play. So we see him in old man makeup, as you know, you see right there. And he's like, oh my gosh, like this play is about me. This story is about me. This is my story. And then the 3 sons are there like talking to the narrator. And they're like, Dad, like, is that you? You know, and they're like reunited. And they're like, oh, like, you know, where's Mom? And then like they're both like, I thought she was with you. Like, I thought she was with you. And at some point it comes up like, like, oh, you know, because the sons asked, like, is there more of us? Did you, like, make another family? Because he was, you know, he's gone for, like, decades at this point. And it's like, are there more siblings? And he's like, no, like, I can't have sex, like, because I'll die. Like, that's how my dad died. And then we get a flashback to the real Beau, you know, as a young kid, and his mom is, like, telling him, and, like, oh my gosh, like the cinematography for this is like way better than it needs to be. But that's just like Ari Aster. And it's the mom, the young version of the mom is played by Zoe Lister-Jones. She's been in like a few like comedies and stuff, like sitcoms and movies. Like I know she's the right off the top of my head, I know she's the therapist in The Other Guys that like Mark Wahlberg is going to the support group for people that have fired their weapons on duty. But yeah, she's playing the young version of the mom. And it's taking place in Beau's bedroom, and there's like some kind of like night light that's like spinning, so it's like very red, and we're only seeing like her face in the dark in red, but it like kind of you know, the light kind of goes away because like something's like spinning. Whatever the light source is, there's something that will block it every once in a while. So it's crazy, like eerie and creepy. So she's telling him the story like, hey, like I want to tell you about the day that your dad died. Your dad died the day you were conceived, the moment you were conceived. Basically, the night we met or our wedding night, whatever. Like I don't know, like. Because she's also, you could tell, the type of person that will just say whatever to be in control of the situation. So, we don't know if this is true, but this is what she's saying. And she's saying, like, oh, like, it was, you know, the first time we ever made love. Your father finished in me and died right there because he had a heart murmur, the same heart murmur that you have. And so, it's basically like, it's basically just like a horror story of like, hey, you better not have sex because like your dad had this heart murmur, the same one that you have, and he died because he came in me. And you know what I mean? So it's like the ultimate like parent, in control, like I am the only woman you ever need in your life. Even though she puts on a front, like, throughout his life, like, oh, I noticed you're into this type of girl and stuff like that, and and trying to be all like, oh, I understand, like, no one knows women better than women, and she's trying to be like the cool mom who's gonna like help him get like a girlfriend and everything. But deep down, like, now that we know this information, it's like, oh, this is just like, oh, I'm gonna be the only woman for you your entire life because I'm the most important and all that. So yeah, basically, like, he has this flashback of being told this story, and then like we get back to the play, and he's telling his sons, and like, the play version of him is telling the sons like, oh, well, no, like, I can't, like, I've never been with a woman. And they're like, well, then how are we here? Like, how can you have sons if you never... And then that's where he like snaps out of it, and then it's just him standing up in the crowd of the play, and the woman that like found him and like brought him in, she's like, hey, like, you okay? And he's like, oh yeah, and he sits down and everything, and then it's just the play continues. Play gets interrupted by Jeeves showing up in full tactical gear because he's been tracking him on the phone. Just starts mowing people down with a machine gun and blowing people up with grenades and everything. And oh wait, one thing I should mention is that at some point Beau has an interaction with a man in the crowd that says like, hey, like, your father's alive. Like, I worked for your mother, feeding and taking care of your father. And he's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? But then the guy, like, I think then he notices the ankle monitor or something. He notices something on Beau and then is like, oh, never mind. Forget that I said anything. So, yeah. So that's like our first hint that like, okay, maybe the mother's not telling the truth, like with the story or whatever. And it's like, okay, is that the dad? Is he just saying that the dad is, Beau does think that this is his dad. But that guy gets blown up by Jeeves, ends up running away and everything, makes it out of the woods. Think as Jeeves ends up like falling on like he's got this like machine gun, like, it's not like a full on rifle. It's like a Uzi almost because it's like kind of shorter. And so he like falls, but then the gun like flips around and the barrel's like going like into his shoulder. And it's funny. Like it's so like extreme violence, but like so hilarious because it's just like this gun like firing through him and he's still like on his phone, like trying to like, get Beau because he's got the tracker open and he hits the button that says like incapacitate, and then the ankle monitor like zaps him, and then he falls to the ground and passes out. I think he has another dream, but I forget what happens in that. And wakes up, hitches a ride into Wasserton. So, like, this is where we kind of like realize it's kind of hinted before, but like the mom is a big enough deal to have the whole town named after her. And so he gets a ride to the town. There's like catering and stuff is like loading up. So there was a funeral, even though the lawyer's like, oh, like, there won't be a funeral till you get here and all this stuff. And so this is like just more evidence that people are just manipulating him all the time. And gets there, the caterers are leaving, and there's like the video is playing, and he goes in there. It's just like more indication that this is just like a dark comedy because it's an open casket and the body's just there with no head, just laying there and the head's gone. And it's like, oh my God, that's just like what tells you like this isn't real. Like this isn't reality. It's just like perception. You know what I mean? Or it's either perception or conspiracy, whatever. Like, but it's hilarious. And it's like, you shouldn't be laughing at that, but it's just so funny just to see this like open casket and there's just a head missing, And, kind of Remember Hereditary? It's all connected. And, by the way, so one other thing that was interesting in the podcast I listened to is that Ari Aster said that the Orphans of the Forest were supposed to be a cult and not just like a theater group. But, so he had written the Beau is Afraid script before any of his other films. And it just had trouble like getting it made and everything. So it was like, all right, like, let me write something else. And then he wrote Hereditary, and then that got picked up and everything. So he was basically able to use his momentum off of Hereditary and Midsommar, because he made those like so close together. Like, oh, okay, let me get these two hits out, and then I can make my like passion project. You know what I mean? So initially it was supposed to be a cult, but as we know with Hereditary and Midsommar, is that they're very centered around cults. So it's like, okay, I can't do a fucking third cult, so let me just change that. So yeah, they were just a theater group. And so this, once he's there at his mom's house and everything in the funeral, this is the, or once he wakes up in the forest, I guess, and is on his way, this is the start of the fourth and final act. And he's there, he's watching we can hear the audio from the funeral video and stuff like that, but he's just kind of just walking around and, looking at the pictures and stuff. It's weird because there is a picture of him, like, from the security footage that we saw earlier, is, like, hanging on the wall. And then he's, like, looking in the mom's office, and there's, like, ads from the products that, Mona Wasserman is the MW. It's this logo right here on the record. For those in the video that can see it. But we see like different ad campaigns over the years of like, oh, here's like kind of like an Adderall, or what's the other one? Ritalin. Like that type of drug. It's like, it's called Do It All, and it shows like a young Beau, doing his homework and stuff like that. And so it's all these like different drugs and food products and security systems, all that stuff. And the ads are like very, remind me of the kind of like extreme stuff you'd see in like dystopian, futuristic, like this is your only shot or whatever. Like, I'm trying to think like of another example of this besides like WALL-E or something. But like, while he's looking at these pictures and stuff, he's like only like looking at some stuff, but we're seeing it through the camera. And there's this portrait of his mom. So the current, the older version of his mom is played by Patti LuPone, like a famous Broadway. And a lot of these people are like Broadway, big Broadway people, like Nathan Lane, of course, we know is a Broadway actor. So it's this like picture of her, but it's one of those ones where like the portrait is made up of a bunch of tiny pictures. So if you look at the tiny pictures, it's all the employees. And Beau is looking at this picture, and he sees the camera focuses on Elaine, played by Parker Posey, the girl that he met on the cruise ship and everything as a young girl. But something I didn't notice till the second or third time I saw the movie is that Roger is there. And he's kind of like up and over a little bit. Like, I guess like up and over. Yeah. Like kind of like here. If like the center of the screen right now is where Elaine is, like Rogers is like up here. So it's like if you're not, we're supposed to focus on Elaine, and our eyes are drawn towards the center of the screen, obviously. And we're like, oh my God, that's her. And then like later on, I just was like, wait, that mustache, those glasses, that's Nathan Lane, that's Roger. Shit. Like, oh my God, how did I not notice that the first time? And so then we know that Roger is a Wasserman employee. So, And but like it doesn't, like, I guess that is the payoff. It's not like there is going to be a payoff later. Kinda, I guess it, like, the stuff that's going to happen kind of makes it make more sense, but it's not like Roger comes in later and he's like the Nick Fury of everything. You know what I mean? But so yeah, he's noticing this. We hear a female voice like, "Hey, like, sorry I'm late." Beau goes upstairs and it's Elaine, and she's there. She's like, "Oh my gosh, like, I thought the invitation meant PM, not AM. I brought some flowers. By the way, she owes me money. I don't think you're the right guy to tell that, but just so you know." So she's kind of like, it's just more like random jokes that you're like, okay, is this meant to be a joke, or, but, so then Beau goes upstairs, like, he's like kind of in shock, like, oh my gosh. But she's not clocking anything, and she says like, "Hey, like, I'm just gonna go call another Uber. I'll wait outside." So, but he goes upstairs. He's like, "Elaine?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "It's me. It's Beau." Like, and she's like, "Oh my God, like, you're like, oh, well, like, of course you're here. Like, it's your mom, like, obviously, but like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe it's you." And like, and he's like, "Hey, like, I waited for you, like you said in the note." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, like, I wanted you to," and everything. And, then he kisses her, and she's like, "You want to go inside?" And like, "Let's go inside." And then she's like, "Okay, like, where's the bedroom?" And then they like go up to the master bedroom, and then like her demeanor kind of like changes like real quick. And then like she's like, "Okay, like, you go to the bathroom and get ready, and I'll be out here." And so like they're gonna do it, and Beau goes in the bathroom. It's really funny because we see him like getting himself like kind of psyched up in the mirror, and we see him like he unbuttons his shirt in the mirror, but then when we see him go into the room, his shirt's like all the way back on, and she's like, "I thought you were getting undressed." He's like, "Oh, sorry," and he goes back inside. So that's just a funny joke. He comes back in his underwear, but he like gets into the bed like real quick, and then they're gonna have sex. And she puts on music, and it's Mariah Carey, "Always Me, My Baby." So when this movie was coming out, because I was very excited about it, because I saw Hereditary in the theater, just because I'm like, oh, I heard like, okay, there's this horror movie that's out that's really good, like, go see it. And I was like, all right, like, and this, I think Movie Pass was still a thing at this point. So I was like, all right, like, I'm already paying for this. I'm already paying $10 a month for this company that's about to go bankrupt in 3 weeks. Let me go see Hereditary. And so I saw it, and I was like, fuck, this is so good. Like, oh my God. And so every time, like who directed this? Ari Aster. This is his first movie. Holy shit. What's the next one going to be? The trailer for Midsommar came out. Yes, I was there opening day. There was an earthquake while I was watching it. I don't know if I talked about that in the episode, but yes, that's my favorite of his still, is Midsommar. So naturally I was like looking up everything and following his Instagram, all that stuff, and A24. And so when this premiered, I was like, why is Mariah Carey at the premiere of Beau Was Afraid? And I was like, that's interesting. And then so when I saw this the first time, and just Always Be My Baby starts playing when the sex scene is starting, I was like, oh my God, that's why. And it just made it so much funnier. And they have sex, and he's like obviously nervous, and he's like, but he can't like get it out, and he's like, wait, like, I need to tell you something. It's not safe for, whatever. But then like, he climaxes, and he's fine, And she's like, oh my God. Like, so it's funny because like she had put a condom on him, and it's like, it's super like matter of fact graphic, like, oh my God, like, I really felt that, like, he just blasted through that bag. But she's like, all right, like, let's keep going, because I want to come too. And so she keeps going, And then eventually she orgasms, and then but the camera's on him, and he's like, oh my God, like, and he's just so happy, like, for multiple reasons. It's like he's happy because he was able to have sex and he didn't die like his mom told him he would. And, he's with the woman that he, like, obsessed over, or, like, I guess not, like, obsessed over, but, like, he did wait for her. And it's not like he was constantly like, oh my God, like, where is she? You know what I mean? So it's not like, I don't want to say obsessed, but it's this woman that he fell in love with as a young boy, and he waited for her, like, because he's just, like, a nice guy, that's the thing. It's like, I guess that's the point of the movie Promising Young Woman, is like the nice guy. But Beau is a nice guy. He's a pushover, and there's things he can improve about himself, but he is like a genuinely nice person and a good person. And so he's just like so happy in this moment, like, oh my God, it's finally happening. I'm alive, everything like that. Then he like looks up at her face, and so does the camera, and she died. And she's just like frozen in like rigor mortis or whatever. And so he freaks out. He like climbs off the bed and everything. He's screaming and everything like that. And then like as he's like on the ground, like shielding his eyes and everything, because he like looks up and it's like a mirror. He like looks up and it's a mirrored ceiling and everything, and he could see her body, and it's like just stuck on the floor. But then like it's just like a silent static shot of him or of the from across the bed, and like looking at the side where he is, and we see his head pop up and look over, just like, but it's like complete silence. And then we hear his mom's voice like, no, continue, like, do what you were doing, as if I wasn't here. And then we're like, okay, what the fuck? Like, his mom is dead, that was his funeral, or her funeral and everything. So, and then she like calls some people in, and she's like, get rid of that. Like, I'm talking about the Elaine's body and everything. And they like carry it out like it's a statue, and it's all stiff and everything. It just carry Elaine's body out. And now it's just like guilt trip central, because it's just like, oh my God, like I was dead and you came in here and had sex in my bed and everything. And, it's just like guilt trip, guilt trip, guilt trip. Beau finally reveals, like, I knew you weren't dead, because when I got here and I saw the body, I saw the birthmark on the hands. That's your maid, Martha. And then there's a flashback to Martha, like, tickling him while she's like putting him to bed and everything. And she's like, so yeah, like I saw the birthmark. I know it was Martha's hands. Like how could you? And she's like Martha like begged me to do it. Like she was like volunteered and everything like that. And Beau was just like, how much? Like, how much did you pay her for it? And she's like, enough for her extended family to never have to work again a day in their life, and like they were paid immediately and everything, and like all this stuff. And she just like lays it out like, I knew when you called that, like, you didn't give a shit about me, you didn't care about me, you would go to any lengths and make up like some like Vanishing Keys story to like not come see me or whatever. And Beau's like, no, like my keys were stolen, like that's real and everything. And then like she like starts saying like, oh, like I know like what you say about me. And then she starts playing audio clips from his therapy sessions. And then his therapist comes like out of another room or the bathroom or something, and he's just like got this big smile on his face, like, I got you, And so Beau's freaking out and all this stuff, and he's like I know my dad's alive, like, I met this guy in the woods. He said he's alive. Plus, I've been having these dreams. Like, there's this other me. And because he did talk about this before, but, I'm going to mention it now. There's these dreams that he's having while he's in the bathtub, but there's another version of him arguing with the mom. And It's like, I know, like, where's daddy? And she's like, oh, you want to hurt my feelings or whatever? Like go be with your dad or whatever. Like, and then like puts him in the attic and like closes the door. And so she's like, fine, you want to know the truth? And they like start going towards the attic and everything. And Beau goes up first. And then once he gets all the way up and she's still on the floor, and she's just like, you're such a fucking idiot. Like, that wasn't a dream, that was a memory. And then she's like slams the door closed, and he like feels around in the dark for a flashlight. He finds one. He first sees a guy that looks like him, but like extremely skinny with a beard, and like, oh my god, that was like my twin brother or whatever. And then there's another voice in the attic, and it's like, Beau, oh my boy, you know, whatever, like that. And he looks over, and okay, I think this is the part that, you know, obviously, like I've said it before, I don't think I need to say this, but spoiler alert, like massive spoiler alert for this. And this is the part that like where my mood completely changed on the movie, the first viewing. But then now I'm like all about it. He shines the flashlight over. It's literally a giant penis. Like a giant penis with a face. Like, you know, here's the head part, you know, and the vas deferens, and then there's a face and everything. And with like, you know, little, not claws, but like almost like a praying mantis. I don't know. Like legs and balls and face and everything. And then, you know, and it is just like supposed to be a metaphor, obviously, but it's like the most on the nose metaphor. And Ari Aster did confirm it. It's like people are like looking way too into it. It's just meant to be that his dad was a giant dick. You know, that's it. That's all it means. There's no more meaning than that. But it's just so like shocking, and you're like wanting, because the other two movies are so grounded in reality. It's like it's done in a way that it's like that is possible, you know. So, but it's like at the same time, this one from the beginning is like, this is so over the top. Like from the beginning of the movie, it is over the top. So I don't know why I was just so like surprised and put off by it the first time I saw it. But, you know, it is just like, it wasn't what I was expecting. And then I was just like, I don't know. Like, that's kind of weird. And but then, like, you know, after that, I was fine with it. It was just that initial shock was too much for me. But, so yeah, his dad's a giant dick. Then, like, an alarm outside starts going off. Jeeves is alive, even despite, like, blowing the shit out of his shoulder with the submachine gun. And he comes in, breaks through the window, starts stabbing the dick dad in the balls, and, you know, it's like bleeding, and, you know, there's blood and white stuff coming out of him, so it's not just blood. And but then he gets like a spike through the head, and then, you know, Jeeves is dead finally. But it's weird because it's like he was after Beau, but then he ends up saving Beau's life, and then Beau like kind of like, you know, cowers away, like screaming, gets onto the gets over to like the attic door, which opens by itself and extends down into a ladder. He falls down. The therapist comes and like drags him out into the living room and is like smiling at him the whole time, like, you know, just like very sinister smile. And man, I wish I could remember that actor's name, but he's a A24 all-star. He's also the therapist. Wait, no, what was he? He was in Lady Bird, and that's my favorite role of his, because then he's like talking to Lady Bird's mom, and you find out that he's like depressed and stuff, and that's my favorite role of his. But he's so good, like a older, or not too old, but like middle-aged, heavyset black man. And but yeah, I wish I could remember his name. And he's also in Dune and a bunch of other things. But he's dragging him out and like smiling at him the whole time, and the mom's out there, she's like, I try to hide the truth from you, and, and just like more like, guilt and guilt and guilt and guilt, to where Beau finally snaps and chokes her, and because she's just like calling it, then it becomes like very personal, like attack on him, like, you're so stupid and this and this and this, and then he just snaps, chokes her, and then he snaps out of it. He's like, oh my god, and then she backs up and then collapses dead into a like glass terrarium. And then he's in shock again, and he just like walks out of the house. But what's weird about this is like the therapist is just gone at this point. Like, we don't see his reaction or anything. He, if he is there, he allows Beau to leave after this happens, like, all that stuff. So it's like another weird, like, if you really think about it, like, none of this really adds up. But on purpose, it's not like a continuity error or anything like that. So we see Beau leave the house. He has like the same shocked expression on his face. Not a rowboat, but like a little motorboat. And then he just like starts going across, like, we're not sure if it's a lake, the ocean, whatever. Like, because we don't know where exactly he is, because it's a fictional town. But yeah, he sets off on the boat, and it's night, and the stars are beautiful and everything like that. And he's just going, and he comes across, he goes into this like cave, and he's going through the cave, and he comes out on the other side. And then the boat just stops, and he's like trying to get it started again. And then lights come on, and he's in like a middle of like a coliseum with like all these people watching him. And then like screens come down, and the lawyer's there with the mom, and it's like his trial, like his life trial, basically. I should mention the lawyer played by Richard Kind, absolutely fantastic in this. Like, he definitely like pisses you off. You're like never on his side, but he's just so good at it. And it's just like showing all these things from his life, and like this is like the evidence that he never cared for his mother, and he's just a spoiled brat and all this stuff. And no matter what Beau says, like, and then like Beau's defense attorney is like, doesn't have a microphone, so he's just like yelling from, it's just voice is all like far away and echoey. And he gets like thrown into the water and killed or something like that, or thrown on some rocks. And it doesn't matter what Beau says. And then Beau realizes this, and he just like, he tries and he pleads his case and everything, but it just doesn't matter what he says. He's always going to be wrong. And then the boat flips, and he ends up drowning. And then the credits roll over the flipped boat after his like yell, like his muffled screams from under the boat have subsided. And then it just, people just slowly and this was insane, because I don't know if this was like foresight on the part of Ari Aster or what, because the first time I saw it, it was literally like you're just waiting like for something to happen as the credits roll. But as the people in the movie in the Coliseum are filing out of the seats, so are the people in the actual theater that you're watching it. And you're just like, okay, like, is something going to happen? Like, what's going to happen? Because I saw it, the first time I saw it, it was before there wasn't any entry on aftercredits.com, because it was the limited release first. And usually those things don't pop up till the wide release. So I sat through the whole thing and just watched as like people slowly started filing out in the Coliseum, in the movie, and in real life in the theater I was watching. And it was just so, I don't know, there was something surreal about it. But I was just like sitting there stewing in like how much I was like disappointed with it that first time I watched it. Second time, third time, fourth time, loved it. I was just like, yeah, hell yeah, that was a great movie. But so yeah, that's like the plot. And like, I know I said in the beginning of the episode that I wasn't really going to talk about that, but hey, at least I got through it a lot quicker than I would have with all like the notes and everything. But yeah, main theme, like I touched on before, anxiety, It's just very relatable. It's like you do think in like worst case scenarios, kind of, and you're able to build things up in your head to the point that you see on screen in Beau is Afraid. Like, and like I said, it's not everybody, but like I know I can like think about like, oh, like I want to go meet some new people, because I'm full disclosure, I'm living in a new area right now, somewhere that I haven't, like I've lived in Washington State on the other side, but I left when I was 4 years old, so I barely remember it. I have like the most minimal memories of living in Washington State. I have like, I have one person that I consider a friend that lives here, just someone I met during orientation, and he's a good friend and everything. But it's like, you want to have like more people that you can go interact with. And as a person with anxiety, it's very easy to work yourself up into a mindset of it's going to go bad. Like, it's like, I'm going to go talk to this person. Like, I'm going to go talk to this woman that I think is, attractive and I might want to date, and she's going to turn me down, and all this bad stuff is going to happen. Like, someone's going to come like to her aid, or, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, not that I'm going to be aggressive, but like when you have anxiety, the expected reaction that you have of an interaction like that is of someone who is doing an extreme act. Even though all you're doing is like, hey, like, what's your name? But the reaction you envision is of someone that's like, hey, like, I want to fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, I would never say that. But that's the reaction that you picture of you just going to say, like, hey, what's your name? So that's what we're dealing with. I'm trying to like get it to where people that don't have it can kind of realize what it's like. So Beau is afraid, like just going out and about in the city is whatever. It's like, yeah, anywhere you go, something bad can happen to you, especially these days. But when all your perception is of the news, and the news is saying that all these people are going to kill you and murder you, and it's always, death, murder, suicide, like all this stuff. That's your perception of what's outside. And when you are an anxious person and then you visualize worst case scenarios, that's all you're picturing. It's like all that's really going to happen, most likely. I'm not saying that these bad things can't happen, because they do happen, but it's always like worst case scenario. So all that's really going to happen is you're going to go to the store, you're going to get what you want, you're going to purchase it, and you're going to come home. But what you're envisioning is like, I'm going to go and this person is going to attack me, or this homeless person is going to ask me for money and I don't have change, so they're going to get upset and they're going to hurt me, or that person across the street is going to not like that, like not like the way I look, it's so extreme. It doesn't make sense logically for an outside person, but I don't know. It's so easy to just work yourself up over nothing. So yeah, I don't know if I've done any justice to explaining this. Yeah, I don't know. And I don't even know if that's everything I wanted to say on this, but I really do now enjoy this movie. And I think that's the other reason. It's like, the other reason I didn't like it the first time is that it just hit a little too close to home. And it was like you almost got, I almost got defensive over it, I guess. But It's just showing something in a different way. Like it's by far not the first movie to deal with anxiety. Not by a long shot. But I think, at least from what I've seen, it's the first movie to show anxiety like this. Because I've seen allegories for anxiety, anxiety and depression. Like what's the animated short from last Oscars from the UK? I forget the name of it. It was like the boy, the rabbit, and the horse, or something like that. Maybe not rabbit, but that one. That showed like mental health stuff in a creative way, and I really liked that. But that was in like a more emotional, soft, less in your face, less comedic way. And I think that's what, like, this was done so extreme that it could be off-putting. But, you know, I think it's the right way to do it, because it is like, that's how your brain works on anxiety. It is in extremes. Like, it is it's not correct, but you're just thinking like these worst case scenarios all the time. And it sucks, you know? It does. And it is like all about like fixing your mindset. And that is so hard, because it is so easy for someone that doesn't understand and doesn't get it to be just like, oh, just don't think like that. Okay, yeah, thanks, you know. But I know that. I know I'm not supposed to think like that. But it's just, that's literally like the definition of easier said than done, you know. I don't want to think like that. I want to just be like, oh, I want to be confident. I want to go out. I want to go have a good time. I want to like talk to people and all that stuff. And I want to be normal. But it's just not that easy. And I'm not using that as an excuse. Like, oh, I'm never going to do anything. I'm just going to stay at home and, you know, because I have anxiety. You know, I'm not saying like don't try to better yourself, because you should. Like everyone, like no matter what state of your life you're in, always better yourself. Like always like try to be a little better, you know, whether like you have everything. It's like, you know, well, okay, then maybe how do I make other people better? You know what I mean? But no one has everything. All I'm saying is just be more understanding of other people that may be dealing with it, or yourself if you're dealing with it. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. And that's another thing that's like very hard, is just like being hard on yourself. Just remember you're not alone. Like other people deal with it. And, you know, seek other people that you can talk to, because I know therapy is very expensive. It is. Like I've looked for it like on the outside, but I'm very lucky that I am a veteran, so I can get it covered, but it's a very long process. So, but there are other resources, just like finding like a support group on like Reddit or something, you know, even though that's not always the best option, but sometimes it is your only option, you know. Anyways, I got way too deep on this. I think that's all I want to say on this movie. Another thing that I already said earlier. But thank you guys for watching. I hope that this episode was okay. It's a little different than usual. I didn't really take notes. I had started to, and I just it was like, you know what? It's just a little exhausting, especially for this movie. So let me just wing it this time and kind of focus on like more of the themes and everything like that. Oh, shit. That being said, another theme that Ari Aster did talk about is that it's about controlling parents and different parenting styles and everything like that. There are a lot of parents that are very controlling of like everything their kids do. And, you know, obviously this is an extreme heightened example, but it is just all about like how you parent your kids does a lot for how they end up like in life. You know, we all know that because we can see the the way that we are compared to like how our parents taught us. And they either like did it okay, they did it completely wrong, they were too strict, they weren't strict enough, like they like for 2 hands off, they were 2 hands on, whatever. But it's just like another factor of this was different parenting styles, and in this case a very extreme version of overbearing and guilt trippy and all that stuff. So again, thank you for watching, listening, whichever. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, whichever is applicable to the medium you're consuming this in. And thank you guys, and see you next week. Thanks. Bye.